This week on Lewis on the Law, I've got another great show for you. I'm really excited. I have attorney Jerry Parisi on with me, and we're going to talk hot coffee.
Welcome to Lewis on the Law.
Powerful beyond measure. That's exactly what we want to inspire you in the audience to be, is powerful beyond measure. And how do we do that? We do that by empowering you. And this show that we're bringing you today embodies empowerment. And we'll get into why in a minute. But I have attorney Jerry Parisi on with me, and we're going to talk about some hot coffee today. An extremely famous case, and a case that gives kind of gave the legal profession kind of a sour name, and made attorneys and lawsuits kind of a butt of late night jokes. But I have to defend attorneys, and I have to defend the profession of law, mainly because I'm an attorney. But the practice of law is one of the great practices in life, and it's because we have a duty to engineer society. We have a large part in creating the laws and in adjusting the laws when necessary, and creating social responsibility and guiding that coercive structure which builds society. So I'm a little bit on a soapbox here, because this case is a hot topic, a hot button topic, but it's Liebeck versus McDonald's. And Jerry, can you get into it just a little bit? I mean, people have heard about this. I mean, it's been on late night jokes.
Yeah, so it's one of the most famous legal cases out there, James, the McDonald's hot coffee case. Everybody's heard about it.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I don't know where you've been, but it's a classic story of, a frivolous lawsuit. Mm-hmm. Lady goes to McDonald's, buys a cup of coffee, is driving down the road with it in her hands, puts it in between her legs, not paying attention. The coffee spills on her lap. She gets a little bit, burns, and she decides to sue McDonald's because she spilt the coffee on her legs and was uncomfortable. Well, she ends up winning almost $3 million. So that's the story that most people know, but that's not the real story.
No. And when you said it's frivolous, that's what people think of. When they think of frivolous lawsuits, they think of the McDonald's hot coffee case. Nobody knows the name Liebeck versus McDonald's. Everybody knows this as the McDonald's hot coffee case. And it's synonymous with frivolous lawsuits. Yeah,
it was really used by a lot of people for a lot of different reasons to show this greed, the frivolous lawsuits and trying to get over on corporate America, the little guy that goes in and tells a jury a sob story and walks out rich. And is really used to, vilify people that take cases to court. You shouldn't sue anybody if you're injured, basically is what they want to say. You should take whatever.
That's what the corporations would like you to believe.
Exactly. You should take the small settlement that they're offering. You should go away. You shouldn't have your day in court because it's really bad. It portrays you in a bad light if you do sue somebody, if you do go to court to have your story heard. And that's unfortunate.
That's extremely unfortunate, because what that does is that gives corporations this rampant leave to just go ahead and do whatever they want, to basically roll over people and say, well, if you sue me, or if you try and redress your grievance through the courts of law, then you're a bad person.
Exactly. And that's not the case at all. The vast majority of lawsuits that are filed are not frivolous lawsuits. And, most cases don't ever go to trial. Fewer than 1%, I think, of cases that are filed ever go to trial. And those really, the frivolous lawsuits get weeded out way before they ever get into court.
Yeah, there are all kinds of mechanisms that lawyers use, summary judgment motions to dismiss, that will alleviate claims that have absolutely no merit before they reach court. So this is not what we're talking about in Liebeck versus McDonald's. I mean, I was shocked, and I saw pictures of the injury. I was shocked when I saw the pictures of the injury. And let me tell you, people out there, people listening to this show, people who will see this show on the video blogs that are put out, that it is literally shocking what this coffee did to this woman's body. It's not just a little bitty burn on your finger. It was much worse than that.
Yeah, James, it's really bad. And so really quick, the actual story, what actually happened. Mrs. Liebeck was a 79-year-old lady. She goes to McDonald's. Her grandson drives her. They're going to get breakfast. They pull through the drive-thru. They get their meal, and they pull right into one of the McDonald's parking spaces there. Mrs. Liebeck's grandson hands her the cup of coffee. She puts it between her legs, and she's trying to, I guess, add her cream and sugar. As she's doing this, she spills it on her lap, all over her lap. And she admits that it was totally her fault. The spill was her fault. McDonald's didn't do anything to cause or contribute to it. The cup was totally fine, everything like that. But what happened was this coffee soaked into her sweatpants, and it was so hot that it caused third-degree burns, the most severe type of burns that you could get. She goes into shock. She goes straight to the emergency room. She's admitted to the hospital. She stays there for a week. She has skin grafts. Skin is taken from the side of her thighs and grafted into her inner thighs and her genitals. They were so severely burned. Like you mentioned, the pictures.
Yeah, the pictures are horrible. And I think it's really important. She went into shock. She had to have skin grafts. This is on her genitals and inner thighs. I mean, I've actually seen pictures of it, and I was shocked. I was like, "Oh my God! Okay, if they showed that to the jury, it's reasonable why she actually received some money in damages." Yeah,
it was really severe. There was, the worst burns you can get on your legs. 79-year-old lady. So yeah, that was really difficult to see. Those pictures.
So she admitted she spilled the coffee. She admitted she put it in her lap. She admitted she opened the cap to put sugar and cream in. So where's the liability here?
Yeah. So what did McDonald's do? Well, the coffee was so hot. It wasn't just hot coffee like you and I get from the home brew, the Keurig, whatever. It's nothing like that. McDonald's had a corporate policy of serving coffee at 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is, we're talking about really hot. For example, when you make a cup of coffee at home, it's usually about 30 degrees cooler than that 190 degrees. Okay. So it's way, hotter. And in fact, they had an expert testify at trial that if you were to drink the coffee as it came out, that it was so hot that it would burn your mouth, it would burn your throat. You could absolutely not drink that coffee.
My God. So why did McDonald's have their coffees? Was this just a regular policy at McDonald's? Or is this just a one-time incident?
Yeah, great question. And that's what Mrs. Liebeck originally thought. So to back up a little bit, she asked McDonald's just to cover her medical expenses, which were approximately $20,000, and to fix the machine. She thought it was broken. Well, the machine wasn't actually broken. It was McDonald's corporate policy. It was in their policy and their written, standards to serve coffee between 180 and 190 degrees. So it was no mistake. It was what they did on a daily basis.
But why would they do that?
It was an industrial standard. Somehow it made their crappy coffee taste better. To heat it up that high,
when no one can actually even taste it, I guess so.
Yeah, something like that. It was some kind of corporate secret or something like that. Yeah, like the special sauce. It was the special hot coffee that made you not taste how terrible it was, I guess.
So this is corporation wide. It's not just one single isolated place that had a coffee being served at 180 to 190 degrees. This is a corporate wide policy.
Across the country and across the world, in fact. It was their policy to, exactly, serve the coffee that hot.
Okay, so the burns are really severe. And did McDonald's, still, they're serving hot coffee. Is it their responsibility that someone spilled it on themselves? Or what was negligent about their decision?
Great question. So they admitted at trial that their customers did not realize how hot the coffee was, that it would cause those type of burns. They're expecting more similar to the coffee that they brew at home or the coffee that you get in a diner, nothing that would cause third-degree burns within 3 seconds. For instance, when you get your coffee at home, the temperature where it's 30 degrees cooler, it would take approximately 20 seconds for that coffee to create the same type of burns. But that coffee's going to cool down over time.
Because coffee at home could actually create those type of burns. Because what I saw was I've spilled coffee. I spilled coffee on myself today coming here. I've spilled coffee on myself. I have never had anything like that happen.
Yeah, so it's also not going to happen to you with your home brewed coffee because over those 20 seconds, the coffee's going to cool down. What happened to Miss Liebeck is that it soaked into her sweatpants and it stayed on her skin. Most of the time, if you spill coffee, you're going to get up right away, get it off you, get it away from your skin. But Miss Liebeck couldn't do that. She was stuck in a car. She had sweatpants on, and the coffee was so hot that within 3 seconds, it caused those severe burns.
Wow, and it's important to note that she went into shock after this spill. But before we get into more of this, we're going to get into more details. But we're at the end of this segment. Jerry, give our listeners some contact information for you.
Yeah, so I'm a personal injury trial attorney, and you can give me a call anytime on my cell phone, 404-594-5130.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I am bringing a great show here today for you, a great show to empower you, the listeners. I want to remind you that what you hear on this show should not be taken as legal advice. We are only bringing you information to help you decide if you have a case, what type of attorney you're looking for, what type of issues you may want to preserve. If you have a serious legal issue, make sure you hire an attorney to handle it. Don't rely on what you hear on this show and use that as legal advice. When we get back, we're going to get into more details about this hot coffee case. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and once again, we are bringing it to you guys. We've got a great show going for you guys. Before we get into that, I want to let you know that not only does this show air every Saturday morning, but we stream nationally on almost every single national podcast platform that you can think of. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, you name it, we're streaming. This show is even AI compatible. You can and I did this just the other day to keep practicing it to make sure it works. You can say, hey, Google, play Lewis on the Law, episode 52 with attorney Jerry Parisi, hot coffee episode, and this show will come streaming out of your AI listening device. How about that for modern technology, Jerry?
I love it, James. Episode 52. Just like my favorite Super Bowl. Which one was that, James?
Oh, no. Did I say 52?
52.
I don't think we're on 52. I think we're on 53, 60. Okay. See, I was wrong. I was just using that as an example. Hey, did you see my watch, Jerry? Don't you like that?
Go Eagles.
Yeah, nice watch. Go Cowboys. It's gonna be down between the Cowboys and Eagles this year.
Can't wait.
I know, right? October something. Yeah.
7th, I think.
Yeah. That'll be the showdown. Anyways, I still love you, even though you're an Eagles fan. You know, I put all that aside. I put all that on the side. We might have to make a little friendly wager though later on.
Will do.
Okay, so She wasn't asking for all this money. She admitted that she was at fault. I mean, and McDonald's has some liability because their coffee is way hotter than it needs to be. But still, did they have any kind of notice or anything like that? I mean, is this just an isolated incident? And I mean, why did she get so much?
Yeah, great question, James. So like we said, the case went to a jury. The jury heard all the evidence. One of the important things is, were they on notice? Yeah, they had over 700 incidents where people had been burned or injured by hot coffee prior to Mrs. Liebeck.
They had 700 incidents?
700. Some of those ended up in lawsuits or settlements. So they were definitely on notice that their coffee was hot. But the other evidence that the jury heard, and this is what made the verdict so large, was that the corporate representatives from McDonald's were kind of indifferent to the fact that these people were being injured by their coffee. One of the key things was that one of the people, the corporate representatives who was deposed, said that the number 700 people, that was statistically insignificant compared to the amount of coffee that McDonald's served across the country every day.
Statistically insignificant. So you listeners out there, because I think my show's average somewhere right around 1,000 people. So you listeners out there, you guys are insignificant. That's what McDonald's is telling you.
Exactly, and those words stuck with the jury. When the jury went back and deliberated, they really thought it wasn't just 700 people out of 1 million per day or whatever the number is. There is a person behind every number, right? And that's what McDonald's failed to recognize. So
I think lots of people fail to recognize that, and it's something that's really important because they look at the number 700, but those are 700 people, 700 human beings with lives that were messed up.
Yeah, those were 700 people. Somebody's father, brother, child, and in this case, Mrs. Liebeck was a grandmother. She had a family, and these injuries from the coffee really affected not just her but her whole family. They had to live through this, and they had to help her. And, it does something to you as a person. It's not just one person burns themselves and has $20,000 in medical bills like Mrs. Liebeck did. it really affects your life, which is, you get into the damages. It's not just the medical expenses. It's the compensatory damages, the injury, the pain and suffering. That's what the jury awarded Mrs. Liebeck.
Okay, so pain and injury we get. What are compensatory damages?
So compensatory damages are for your injuries, the medical bills, your pain and suffering. And I think the jury in this case awarded Mrs. Liebeck somewhere around $160,000 in those compensatory damages. And the rest of the jury award was made up of punitive damages. And the jury awarded those punitives because McDonald's was consciously indifferent to the fact that they had a problem. They just really didn't care, and I think Mrs. Liebeck's attorneys did a great job at showing that, this giant corporation cares about the numbers, not about the people.
And so if they cared about the numbers, did McDonald's just go ahead and offer to pay her medical bills? I mean, it's $20,000, right? That's a drop in the bucket to the mighty McDonald's corporation. So
this all goes back to the story that, everybody thinks Mrs. Liebeck or whoever this person was greedy and filed this frivolous lawsuit seeking millions of dollars. She originally, her family, she didn't hire an attorney at first. Her family wrote a letter to McDonald's asking them to cover her medical expenses which were $20,000 at the time. And turn the machine down, fix them. They thought the machine was broken. They had no idea that this was a corporate policy.
That would be the normal thing is this can't be the way they're doing business.
Yeah. So they asked for $20,000 and McDonald's wrote back. I think at first they didn't offer anything, but pre-trial they offered at some point $800 for Mrs. Liebeck to go away. Which
$800?
Yeah, which is totally ridiculous. And that's just how they think about, people and people filing a lawsuit for something like this.
And I think this brings up a really important point because people think that, and especially we've used the word several times, frivolous lawsuits. People think that a lot of lawsuits are frivolous, but lawsuits play an extremely important role in society, as in they redress grievances against large bodies, large economically strong, politically strong bodies, which without these lawsuits would just run around untethered.
Right. So, exactly. So when you're injured, it's called a tort. Like a tort is some, harm done to another.
Is it like a tortoise? No. Okay.
It's a little bit different, James.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. So a personal injury lawsuit is a tort lawsuit. So, and the only way to really compensate someone for that tort, you can't put Mrs. Liebeck's skin back. You can't take away the pain and suffering. You can't reverse somebody. If in the case of a wrongful death lawsuit, you can't bring somebody back from the dead and things like that. So how do you redress those grievances? Like you said, it's monetary. So you've got to put a value on the pain and suffering, the value on the medical expenses, the value on the loss of life, things like that. And it's just with a monetary value. So when people say a frivolous lawsuit, she got $3 million. Well, that's what the jury thought. In this case, the punitive damages were worth against McDonald's.
So how much did you get in punitive damages?
Well, that's a very interesting question, James. And it varies state by state. Because of this McDonald's case, a lot of people and a lot of corporations and a lot of business interests use this McDonald's case as a rallying cry to enact tort reform. So in the early 90s, there was a big push for tort reform to have a federal legislation to limit jury awards in cases like this. It was passed through Congress, and I think President Clinton ultimately vetoed it. So then those interest groups went and tried to enact their legislation statewide, and they were able to successfully in many states, including Georgia. And they vary state by state. Some states have a total cap on damages. I think Kentucky may be one. Other states like Georgia have a cap on punitive damages. So in Georgia, with some exceptions like a drunk driver or products liability cases, the state caps punitives at $250,000. So an award like Mrs. Liebeck's wouldn't be possible today in Georgia.
Now that's $250,000. That seems like a really low number if someone's life is materially affected.
Right. There's other types of damages, the compensatory damages for the pain and suffering like we talked about. But as far as punitives are really where the jury finds that the company, the defendant, the insurance company, whatever it is consciously indifferent. They just don't care. And it's shown through the evidence that they didn't care about what would happen, what would be the actual reasonable result of whatever their actions or omissions would be.
And $250,000 to me sounds like a lot of money on first blush, and it may sound like a lot of money to a lot of you listeners, but I spent my life in corporate America, or at least part of my life in corporate America, and $250,000 may just be the cost of doing business for a lot of these large corporations.
Yeah, exactly. It's statistically insignificant to them.
It is, and it is statistically insignificant, and I think that might actually be a problem.
Yeah, perhaps I probably agree with you, James.
I mean, we're attorneys, and this type of limit, I think it doesn't actually. And this show, I don't want to get into how the law should be. We shouldn't. We should just talk about how the law is. But maybe that's not enough to really cause corporations to take a second look at some of their activities. I'm just going to suggest that. I won't actually take a stand on that. I guess I just kind of did. But that's because I'm an attorney and I'm coming from a place of self-interest where I would like one of these big $1 million cases. So you guys can just discount that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point that you made, where you said that this type of money wouldn't be enough to make a company change what they're doing. And that's exactly what Mrs. Liebeck's case did. It was successful in that she not only was awarded almost $3 million by the jury, but she was also able to get McDonald's to change their corporate policy. And they turned down the temperature on their coffee machines. Their corporate policy is now to serve coffee at 10 degrees lower than they originally did, which makes Americans safer.
And this is exactly how lawsuits and attorneys can actually affect the structure of the way corporations, America, and society interacts with each other. We're at the end of this segment. That was an awesome segment. We got into some details. Jerry, will you give our listeners some contact information for you once again?
Yeah, you can contact me on my cell phone, 404-594-5130.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. All my old shows are archived on my website. You can go to jameslewislegal.com, and all my videos are on one page, and all my podcasts are on another page. If you have a topic you'd like to hear on this show, you can go ahead and just drop me a line on my contact page and tell me your topic, what you'd like to hear. And if I don't know enough about your topic, I'll bring an attorney on and we'll talk about your topic on air. If you need to get in touch with me, you can always call me at 404-610-0075. Once again, that's 404-610-0075. Or you can email me at james@jameslewislegal.com. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the late night jokes and the campaign that created that type of reaction in a minute. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and once again, this show is bringing it to you. I have attorney Jerry Parisi on with me, and we are talking about hot coffee. And before we get into that, I need to go ahead and throw out our legal disclaimer. This show is only designed to bring you information. We do not intend what you hear on this show to be legal advice in any way, shape, or form. If you have a very serious legal issue, you can always hire an attorney. You can contact me at 404-610-0075, or you can email me at james@jameslewislegal, or you can give Jerry a call at your
404-594-5130, or email me at jerry@parisifirm.com.
Excellent. And before we go on to what I'm going to call basically an orchestrated smear campaign, I'm going to touch on a couple of other facts about that. So about the case itself. So the punitive damage or the punitive award that the jury awarded her, that did not stand. Am I correct?
Ultimately, no, James. The judge reduced the amount significantly. And rather than appealing, the two sides actually came to a settlement agreement somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000. Yeah.
And once again, is that really enough to? I mean, I guess it did have an effect, maybe because of the media and the social awareness of it. But does that really impact corporations?
I think in this case, that number probably wouldn't affect a company like McDonald's, but all the media attention and the scare probably did. have a significant effect on their corporate policies.
Okay, and so now we're talking about this case, and it is a real lawsuit. I mean, it's to the heart of why you sue a corporation. It gets to redress of grievances. It gets to pain and suffering. It gets to reimbursement for her paid medical expenses. So why the jokes?
Why the jokes? Great question. I think that...
I mean, you heard them all the time. I mean, Saturday Night Live, Jay Leno, I think he had them.
Yeah, she was just a really easy target, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody spilled coffee on themselves. And, she admitted it. The jury admitted it. They awarded, they charged her with 20% negligence. So she was 20% at fault. Mm-hmm. And the jury saw that. And everybody could see, you spill coffee on yourself, it's probably your fault. Mm-hmm. So why the jokes? She's just an easy target, a 79-year-old woman who, won a $3 million jury verdict because of this.
So do you think this was like an orchestrated, I mean, was there any corporate push? Was there any push by, say, McDonald's or corporations to create this idea that the lawsuit was frivolous?
I think perhaps at first it may not have been. It may have just been some kind of innocuous, twist of the facts, and people didn't really read the case or know all the facts before making those late night jokes. But it became such a top of mind case for everyone that it really became the landmark case for tort reform. Mm-hmm. And corporations and business interest groups used it for years and promoted it. I think, during the tort reform legislation attempted in the early 90s, this case was the most widely cited case on, during congressional hearings. Mm-hmm. And I think that was all kind of orchestrated by these special interest groups because it's such a case that you look at and say, that was frivolous until you read the facts and you see the pictures and you see the evidence.
And okay, so we have a real serious case. Did our congressman not even recognize the fact that that there was a real issue here?
So I think, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation going around and a lot of money. There's big money being thrown at this to try to sway public opinion. Commercials, billboards, all types of things to try to sway not just congressmen but everyday people. To the point where if you ask people now, the average person that didn't really study this case, doesn't know anything but what they saw on TV or maybe heard on the radio about the McDonald's hot coffee case. And there's so much misinformation and misunderstanding attributed to this case. Mm-hmm.
And the jury, I guess the jury was moved.
Yeah, the jury actually saw the evidence. And that's the great thing about having your day in court, right? You don't get a one-page synopsis or a snippet from a newspaper. You're in trial for a few days usually, and you see the evidence. You hear from the witnesses. You hear from the victim or the plaintiff herself in this case, what happened, how this affected her life. You hear from their medical providers, their doctors. There were experts that testified that these burns the coffee was so unreasonably hot that the risk was just too high for McDonald's to do this.
And I think it's easy for the late night comedians to make jokes about it, but if they actually showed the pictures of the injuries along with the jokes, those jokes would not have had quite the impact. People would have gone they would have had the same reaction that I did. Oh my God.
Absolutely. And that's what you really want when you're looking for a personal injury case to take to trial. It's the evidence. Do you have the pictures? Do you have the medical records to back it up? Like if you go to court with a case like this where somebody just spilled some kind of coffee on them, don't have pictures, really was no medical expenses incurred, you're not going to get a $3 million verdict. So this whole frivolous lawsuit smear campaign that was leveled against Mrs. Liebeck was kind of, it's totally ridiculous when you look at the actual case itself.
So that brings up a really important point, and it's kind of to the core of what this show does. I want to talk a little bit about what type of evidence and I want you to get into a little bit of detail. What type of evidence should people really be looking for them to preserve so that they actually have a case that they can take to a lawyer, that they can get awarded damages for, or that they can actually redress a wrong?
Great question, James. So in a personal injury context, we're really looking for somebody who's injured. you don't get into a little fender bender and fake an injury or put one of those neck braces on when you're not really injured.
Back.
Yeah, that's.
Now I have a bad back, anyways. What if I get into an accident? I mean, my back will go out about tying my shoelaces.
Well, it's the eggshell plaintiff, if you remember from torts class.
Mm-hmm.
It's you take the plaintiff as they come. So if you've got a bad back and they make it worse because your back was already bad, it gets into some specifics, but you got to take your plaintiff as you have them. So if they broke your back because it was already kind of weak, then you've definitely got a case there still. But yeah, you want to preserve evidence. You want to take pictures as soon as you can. Take progression pictures. So like every day that if you've got a bruise, you want to take a picture every day to see how it gets worse or how it gets better. You want to document everything in a journal. Like even if you're in a rear ender car accident, soft tissue type of thing, you want to document every day like how your injuries affected your day. Did you have trouble sleeping? Did you have trouble picking up your kids? Did you have trouble, going to work? Are you able to sleep at night? Like those type of things. And those really played, and the jury can see that you were keeping contemporaneous records of your injuries and you present them to the jury in a way that's thoughtful. That really goes a long way to providing credibility for the plaintiff.
Okay, now when a person is involved in a serious accident like that or obtain an extremely serious injury, should they contact an attorney immediately? Was that helpful at all?
I mean, the first thing
you go to the doctor first.
Absolutely go to the doctor first.
Okay.
Get medical treatment first. That is the first thing you do. I would never recommend that somebody call me before calling an ambulance.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Just that's just ridiculous. Get treatment. Call the authorities too to come out and take care of the accident. And then once you
I think that's a good one. Call the authorities, because even if it's not, I mean, if it's like a hot coffee spill, the authorities could possibly have some evidence that may help you in the future.
Yeah, I don't know about the hot coffee context, but car accident, you definitely want to have the police out there no matter what the other side is saying. You want to get it documented. Anything like that, you want to call the police, get them out there.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So now, in public perception, McDonald's was seen and McDonald's was seen as the victim here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of ridiculous, right? McDonald's gives
it's
somebody.
It's hard to victimize McDonald's unless you're Burger King. Well, I guess Burger King is kind of dead.
Yeah. So, that was great, publicity for McDonald's. The best way they could spin this case, and I don't know if they did it or other interest groups did it, but best result possible for McDonald's is for years, for decades now, it has been McDonald's was the victim in this case, and this little old lady was greedy and out to rob them blind.
Well, I am sure on some of those late night shows, if you go back and watch, I bet there was a McDonald's commercial or two on them, and we all know that the person who puts money in your pocketbook gets a little bit friendlier treatment than the people who don't.
Exactly right, James. So. McDonald's has, the infinite resources to fight a lawsuit like this. And in fact, they couldn't win this because the facts were just not on their side. They were on Mrs. Liebeck's side. And so what does a normal person like Mrs. Liebeck or you or I really have to fight a corporation like that is you can hire an attorney in these cases for a contingent fee, which means you don't pay anything up front. You only pay if you win. So it doesn't cost you anything except your time. There's a lot of headache involved with litigation, so you've got to consider that as well. But you can actually go up against a large corporation, the largest corporations in the world, really, and have your day in court and win. And that's the great system. The great thing about our legal system is that you get to go present your case, present your story to a jury of your peers and have them decide, not the insurance companies, not the late night talk show hosts or the journalists. It's, normal, average, everyday people will decide who's right and who's wrong.
And I think corporate responsibility and corporate taking, I guess it's the same thing as responsibility of corporations basically taking ownership of their actions and the way they treat the public. I think that's an important aspect to the whole Liebeck versus McDonald's lawsuit that's kind of glossed over, especially when McDonald's is made to be the victim in this case. When we get back, we're going to talk about the lessons learned from this. Jerry, will you give our listeners some contact information for you once again?
Yeah, you can give me a call anytime at 404-594-5130 or email me, jerry@parisifirm.com.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. When we get back, we're going to talk about the lessons learned from this lawsuit. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and we have an awesome show going for you guys today. Once again, I have to throw out our little disclaimer. This show is only meant to empower you, the listener, with legal information. This show is not meant to be legal advice. Jerry and I are not here to give you guys legal advice. We're here to present you with information, facts, and in this case, the facts about an extremely famous case that was really misunderstood. If you have a serious legal issue, make sure you go ahead and hire an attorney. You can always contact me, or you can go to my website and listen to my shows. I allow all the attorneys that come onto my show to go ahead and give their contact information. So you can listen. They'll give their contact information. You can get in touch with them directly. I have a whole bunch of legal issues that are covered on my website at this point. We're 60-something shows into this, and I've covered a lot of legal issues. So if you have a serious issue, go ahead and look through that, and you can find an attorney who can help you. Or you can always give me a call at 404-610-0075, and I can help you find a right attorney. If it's a real estate issue, perhaps I can help you with it. You can also go to my website, jameslewislegal.com, and you can go ahead and email me at james@jameslewislegal.com. Okay, we went through a lot. Can you just give me the whole 180-degree view, 360-degree view of the McDonald's case? So
the coffee was 190 degrees, James. But it was Mrs. Liebeck.
190-degree view.
Yeah, 190 degrees, way too hot to be serving coffee. But that's what McDonald's did. And Mrs. Liebeck, got her cup of coffee, pulled into a parking spot. She was not driving. She was trying to add the cream and sugar, and she spilled it on herself. She admitted that it was her fault. She was at fault for the spill. But the coffee was so hot, 190 degrees, that it gave her third-degree burns on her inner thighs and genitals. Significant injuries, very significant.
And when you say that automatically makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was terrible. And the reason McDonald's was at fault here was because they were serving coffee at a temperature that was unreasonably hot and could cause third degree burns within 3 seconds. They had to anticipate that people would spill coffee on themselves at some point. And in fact, they were on notice that this was happening. Over 700 complaints, lawsuits, and settlements. And still, it took a $3 million punitive damages verdict to change their corporate policy.
And I love the fact that the McDonald's representatives basically came in and said 700 people who had serious burns were just insignificant.
Yeah, they didn't do anything because it was only 700 people. And that really, angered the jury, because those 700 people are people. It's not a corporation. It's not a number. There's a person behind every one of those injuries.
And that's a real human life. And I know that I would be upset if I had third-degree burns on my genitals and someone told me, well, it doesn't really matter because you're just kind of an insignificant statistic.
Yeah, you're just one guy out of billions and billions served.
Okay, so let's get into the lesson. What do we learn here? What does corporate America learn here? What is the lesson that we're getting out of this?
Yeah, so I think the lesson is that you can have your day in court. You can go up against a giant corporation with infinite resources. And if the facts are on your side, James, you can win, and you can win big. Not to say that every case is worth, punitive damages, or that punitive damages are, necessary or, reasonable in every case. But you can go and you can be made whole for your injuries when another company or an individual or an insurance company is on the hook for injuries that you've suffered.
So lawsuits, I think the point of this show here and what we really, and the reason I'm excited about this show is because there's this huge misunderstanding about lawsuits in America. People don't want to sue. They don't want to be that guy who sues people. And I understand that, but lawsuits can be an important vehicle to go ahead and redirect something, especially corporations. I don't want to single out corporations, but I'm going to have to in this case. But lawsuits can be an important vehicle to have a check and balance against corporate irresponsibility.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, public misconception or misunderstanding that there are a ton of these frivolous lawsuits out there, and they're just being filed by plaintiffs every day, and they're just greedy and, hurt in a car wreck and faking injuries or something like that. But really, James, that's not the case. There's not a ton of these frivolous lawsuits. There are definitely problems with our civil, justice system and our criminal justice system. But, personal injury lawsuits are not one of them. You can look at, how many people we lock up every day, how many, for-profit prisons that are out there. Those things are issues. There are, there are companies, debt collection companies flooding small claims courts with huge amounts of cases. The dockets are flooded, and who's suffering is the individual people. Sometimes those cases are brought with little to no evidence. And there's all kinds of problems in the justice system, but I don't think that these frivolous personal injury lawsuits are really one of them.
So for-profit prisons, I don't want to get this because I know neither of us are criminal attorneys, but I have a personal grievance with for-profit prisons, and I don't want to bring this out too much, but when you have a for-profit prison and you're having people do manual labor for 20 cents a day, I mean, that's kind of like, and I hate to go there, but institutionalized slavery.
Yeah, James, I don't want to go there either, but I do think it's a huge problem.
There's a problem there.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not going to get, neither of us are criminal attorneys, and this show is not about how the law should be or how things should be, but how it is. So flooding claims, do you think there are like small debt collection agencies are really flooding the courts with claims?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that something that's actually going on?
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand, James, and it's a big problem, and there are so many more of those cases, the small debt collection cases, than there are personal injury or tort cases, that the discrepancy in the amounts is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. So how can a company avoid being one of these companies, one of these irresponsible corporations?
James, they've got to be very introspective and figure out, if corporations are people, they've got to look at themselves in the mirror and figure out what they need to do to be good corporate citizens.
Wow, that is shocking because really what a corporation, when it looks itself in the mirror, is like, how am I making money today? I mean, isn't that really what a corporation is seeing when it looks in the mirror?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat up corporations. I think they're necessary for our economy and for our society. I don't want to beat them up, but at some point, they kind of forget that their consumers are people, and they put dollar amounts and just numbers on them. And I think they've got to reevaluate that a little bit.
And I agree with that. I don't want to beat up on corporations. I am a big believer in capitalism and working for yourself and free enterprise. I love it. I work for myself these days. All hail our American system where you can go out and you can make money in this country and you're only limited by your own drive and your own will, and maybe if you can get the clients or not, that can be a limit. But still, you can do these things here in this country, and it's a great country, and corporations are part of what makes this country great. But I have a problem with irresponsible corporations that don't take people as human beings, but only take them as a number or a statistic. As long as a corporation is being responsible and looking at people as human beings and being a good, like you said, corporate citizen, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's a great point, James. And so one of the things that I think when we talk about frivolous lawsuits and, personal injury cases being filed, is there any merit to the case, things like that? The cases that make it to trial, they're not going to be the frivolous ones. There's all kinds of things that a defendant, a corporation or insurance company can do to get that case kicked out if there really is no basis and no merit to it.
And that's exactly right, because there are mechanisms. If there's no facts, no basis, no basis in law, no merit, that case is going to be dismissed before it ever gets to trial.
Yeah, if the evidence comes out and it shows that there was no case, there's no negligence, there's no cause of action, you're going to file a motion to dismiss, you're going to file a motion for summary judgment, and that case is not going to make it to trial.
Excellent. So this has been a great show today. Before we leave, though, I want to talk because Jerry's a frenemy of mine. Not only is he a friend, but he's a mortal enemy because you're an Eagles fan, right?
Huge Eagles fan, yeah. They're in town this weekend. I'm going to the Eagles-Falcons game, and I'll be cheering my Eagles on.
So you Falcons guys, you go ahead and boo Jerry just for a second, and then if you have a serious issue, go ahead and call Jerry. Jerry, can you give our listeners some contact information for you again?
Yeah, just give me a call whenever you have a personal injury case or a workers' comp case or you're injured, 404-594-5130.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I'd like to thank you guys for being here. This has been a great show. I'd like to thank Attorney Parisi here for being with me, and we will get back to you guys next week. But before I leave, I have to thank the guys who make this magic happen, Mr. Sam Davis, our superstar producer over here, and Mr. Jonathan Bryan over there, making the video magic happen. See you guys next week.